to the stand, please. Mr. Groby, if you will.
Farmer Groby, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. Groby. How do you know the defendant?
Well, I was a farmer in the same village of Alec, D'Urberville, and where news spread throughout the town how Alec and Tess had born an illegitimate child. It was popular news in the town for a very long time. Stuff like that doesn't happen.
Where were you the day before Mr. Angel Clare and the defendant's marriage?
I was at an inn with my friend, and we were in the lobby of the inn, and I recognized Tess in the hallway from afar, and I approached her, and me and my friend were talking that it was indeed Tess. I had recognized her.
Did you and the defendant communicate?
Why, yes, my friend and I agreed that she was a very calmly maid and denied her virginity, and well, Mr. Angel did not like that one bit, but Tess never responded.
How would you describe the defendant's expression at this time?
Well, it was grave. Very grave indeed.
Interesting. And did you ever see Tess again?
Yes, indeed. I saw Tess twice, actually, after that time. She worked for me at my farm. No offense, she was a very bad worker, but, I also ran into her in November in a farm west of the River Britt. It was dusk when I found her standing there, and I asked her why surely it was the young wench who was at the Tantridge Inn a while ago. Recognized her right away again. And I told her to be honest and own up to what I said earlier at the hotel was true. I pointed out your fancy man, Angel, was so up about it. Right, my sly one?
And how did she respond to your questioning, Mr. Groby?
Well, she was silent and ran away.
No further questions.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Elliott, call your next list of witnesses.
We would now like to call Mrs. Brooks, the landlady at the scene of the crime. Mrs. Brooks, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Mrs. Brooks, could you please relate to us the events of the night of Alec's murder?
Sure thing. I don't notice many things that take place in the house, but I happen to notice this incident. Should you know, I'm not a woman with a keen sense of curiosity. I stood in my own room, and I could hear pieces of what Tess was saying to her husband from the door. I could tell from their dejected conversation, if you could even call it that something was up. Soon after, Claire departed and closed the door behind him, while Tess went back up to the first floor. The door of the room above was closed, and I knew that Tess had entered her apartment again. I figured that Tess wouldn't be going out anytime soon because she wasn't fully dressed in her robe. I then went upstairs and stood at the door of the front room, which is the drawing room with the bedroom directly behind it, to see if everything was okay. The D'Urbervilles were staying in the first floor all week long, which happens to be my best apartments in the house. There was no sound in the back room, but I heard some noises from the drawing room. At first, all I could hear was one syllable constantly being repeated in a low tone of moaning. It sounded like, oh, oh, oh. A pause, heavy sigh, and then again. I knew something was not right, so I looked through the keyhole. I couldn't observe the whole room, but I did see a small portion of it in the corner of the breakfast table, which had food already prepared on it and a chair alongside it. Tess's face was bent over the seat of the chair in a kneeling position with her hands over her head. Her slippers had fallen off and her nightgown was on the floor behind her. Then I hear a man's voice say, "What's the matter?" But she refused to give an explanation and instead gave a despairing speech with a rush of emotions. "Oh yes, I have lost him now, because of you." With her head on the chair, she turned her face toward the door, and I could see the pain upon it, and that her lips were bleeding from her teeth clenching on them, and her long eyelashes were stuck to her cheeks. Then she went on, "Oh, you have torn my life all to pieces." I thought that the mysterious speaker would come rushing out the door, so I suddenly ran downstairs out of fear. I didn't necessarily have to go downstairs, but I felt it unsafe to watch on the landing again, and entered my living room below. I couldn't hear anything else from downstairs and continued to eat my breakfast. Then went to the front room to sew, and I could hear the floorboards creak and the front door opening and closing, and Tess going to the gate on her way into the street. She was now fully dressed and had a veil over her black hat and feathers. I didn't get to speak to the renters at the door above. They might have argued, or Mr. D'Urberville may have still been asleep, which was common. I went to my back room and continued sewing, and Tess didn't return, nor did the man ring his bell. The delay of the visitors left me in confusion. But then, I looked over the ceiling where I was thinking and noticed a spot in the middle of the white ceiling that I had never seen before. The spot grew as large as the size of my palm, and it was red. I had some doubts about this bizarre spot, so I decided to get on the table and touch the spot on the ceiling. It was wet, and I was sure that it was a blood stain. I left the living room and went upstairs with the intention of going to the room overhead, which was the bedchamber at the back of the drawing room. But since I was so scared, I couldn't bring myself to open the door. So I listened and heard a type of cadence. Drip, drip, drip. So I quickly ran downstairs and ran into the street. I saw a man I knew and asked him to come inside with me because I was scared something had happened to one of my lodgers. We both opened the door of the drawing room, and the room was empty, and all of the breakfast was on the table, untouched, except one thing, the carving knife. The man went through the folding doors into the adjoining room and said, "My good God, the gentleman in bed is dead. I think he has been hurt with a knife. A lot of blood has run down upon the floor. I observed the small wound and realized that the point of the blade had punctured through the heart of the man." The man laid on his back, pale and changing, lifeless. The shocking news that the gentleman who was an impermanent visitor to our town had been stabbed in his bed, it spread throughout the whole town.
Thank you, Mrs. Brooks.